Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. American politics in the era of Donald Trump is a polarized, partisan bear pit. But still, there are pillars of the US system of governance: the Constitution, the courts, which are supposed to safeguard the liberty of all, irrespective of creed, colour or politics. Well, my guest today is David Cole, the legal director of the American Civil Liberties Union, the century-old guardian of citizens' rights. Has the ACLU betrayed its mission by putting partisanship before principle in the age of Trump? David Cole, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thanks for having me.
It seems quite clear that your organisation, the ACLU, has rebooted itself to maximise its impact in this era of Donald Trump. What have you done and why?
Well, I think the first thing that happened is that citizens throughout the United States, concerned about President Trump's election, turned to us as the oldest and largest civil liberties and civil rights organization in the United States, and joined us in untold numbers. So we had, before President Trump was elected, 400,000 members. Today, we're over 1.6 million members. We quadrupled our membership.
And your revenues?
And our revenues. People, the members are giving us support, sometimes, $25 a time, sometimes much more than that. And so we have many more resources to deploy, but precisely because there are so many more threats to respond to. And so we have, as we told President Trump the week that he was elected, we'll see you in court if you put in place measures that we think are unconstitutional. We'll challenge them in court.
But you made it, I mean, as you've just said, you made it very explicit, even before he'd taken office, after he'd won that November election, you were quite plain that you were going to be taking Trump on. Right. This was political for you from the very beginning.
It wasn't political. It was about the issues, that the civil liberties and civil rights principles that he threatened. So during the campaign, we analyzed both Hillary Clinton's agenda and proposals and Donald Trump's, and we put out reports on both and raised concerns about a number of both of their proposals. But with Trump, he had proposed keeping all Muslims out of the United States. He had proposed overturning Roe versus Wade, which protects a woman's right to have an abortion. And so what we said was, if you engage in measures that violate the Constitution, then we will take you to court. So it's not political, but principled.
Well, we'll go through some of those measures and your reaction and response to them measure by measure later on. But just to continue with this point of a different sort of spirit, a different soul within the American Civil Liberties Union, it seems to me it was made explicit by your colleague, your executive director, Anthony Romero, when he said, look, we learned a lot from the NRA, that is the National Rifle Association, which of course is perhaps the most successful lobbying organization in the United States of America, specifically there to defend the rights of gun owners. He said, look, we looked at the NRA and we decided if we could be a little less legalistic, focus less on the brain and more on the heart, and trying to change the culture, we thought we could then have a bigger impact. So it seems to me that that's a major pivot. You're a lawyerly organization based upon a reading of the Constitution, and suddenly you're talking about emotion, you're talking about the issues of the heart, of passion.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things there. First of all, the defense of civil liberties is not just a defense of reason, it's a defense of passion as well. It's a passion for equality, a passion for dignity, a passion for freedom, and you need to be able to invoke. But with
respect, all this talk of passion, surely the fundamental is it has to be dispassionate. It has to be a dispassionate use of the Constitution and a reading of the law.
Well, I don't know about that. I think, look, we are a nonpartisan organization, so passion and partisanship are not the same thing. You can be passionate about your values without being partisan in terms of which party you support. So, for example, we are passionate about the First Amendment. So we protect the rights of white supremacists to speak. We protect the rights of the NRA in a suit against the governor of New York, who's trying to use his regulatory authority over banks there to ice out the NRA. We're coming in on the side of the NRA. We support the principle of free speech, no matter who is speaking.
You've just raised two very interesting cases. You on the side of the NRA, for example, is a fascinating one, and we'll get to that because it is important, and you were personally very involved in that. But before we do, you said something earlier in that answer about we being the ACLU being a non-partisan organization, which frankly does not stack up with the way you are handling your interventions in current American politics. The midterm election season is on. Yep. You're pouring money into particular races across the country, not for named candidates, but on an issues-based basis, which clearly is supporting Democrats against Republicans. And I can cite you the various races if you want me to.
So I'll talk about that. So one of the things that we did learn from the NRA is that one of the ways that you defend a right, and sometimes the most effective way to defend a right in a democracy, is by using the democratic process to defend that right. That's what the NRA does. There's nothing illegitimate about that.
You're going after candidates. You're going after named Republicans. I mean, you went after Joe Arpaio for a while in Arizona. Of course, he's not running now, but you made a point of going against him. You went against the guy who's running, I believe, Chris Kobach, running in Kansas, for governor of Kansas. You go after named people because you don't like their political positions, and you pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into these campaigns.
So the first thing to say is, yes, we're engaged in electoral politics, but principally, most of our investments are on ballot initiatives. So, for example, restoring the rights of formerly convicted people who have been denied the right to vote in Florida. That is a principled position. Or opposing ballot initiatives that try to take away protections from transgender individuals or from women with respect to abortion. Those are principled. And with respect to candidate elections, where we are also engaged in a very small number of candidate elections, we are engaged.
Listen, if non-partisanship is so important to you, simple question: why are you spending $800,000 at least on a television ad campaign boosting the Democrat Stacey Abrams in her very close race for governor of Georgia against Republican Brian Kemp?
We're not boosting Stacey Abrams. What we are talking about are the principles and values and civil liberties and civil rights issues that are at stake in that campaign. At the end of every ad, we say we do not endorse either of the candidates, but there's nothing to stop a nonpartisan organization from doing voter education about issues. That's what Planned Parenthood, which is a nonpartisan organization, has done. The NRA is a nonpartisan organization. It educates people about gun rights. It supports whoever is the stronger supporter of gun rights, whether that person is a Democrat or a Republican, and we're the same way. So why would you, look, if you're trying to protect civil liberties and you're a democracy, and the people who exercise power are the people who get voted into office, why would you not engage in that elections to make sure that people, when they go to the polls, vote like their rights depend on it?
The problem is some of your best friends don't buy it. I'm going to quote you a few. Start with former senator, former Democrat and then independent Senator Joe Lieberman. He says this, and he used to be a good friend of the ACLU. He said, the ACLU has chosen to become a direct actor in partisan politics, morphing what was once a non-partisan organization into what looks like just another advocacy group on the left. That is very damning.
Well, you know, Joe Lieberman has not been a friend of the ACLU for a very long time. And look, I think the point is, again, that if you're going to be an effective defender of liberty, you can use the courts, and we do use the courts. You can use the legislature, and we've always used the legislature. But if you don't use the power of the people, you are giving up. There's a famous quote that Judge Learned Hand, one of the greatest judges in United States history, said that liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies there, no court, no constitution, no law can save it. While it lies there, it needs no court, no constitution to save it. And the point there is that liberty has to live in people's hearts. What we do is gather people together in the fight for liberty, and we use all the tools that are available. We do it in a nonpartisan way. We defend the rights of Republicans as well as Democrats. We do not support or oppose any candidate for office.
You will be aware that a host of former ACLU board members think you're going down the wrong track here. Michael Myers is one.
Yeah.
Ira Glasser is another. Ira Glasser said this, and this is an interesting point. In the New York Times just a few months ago, he said that your, in his view, de facto backing of progressive candidates is a mistake, because he says the problem is you get into politics and that ultimately all power, he says, is an antagonist of liberty, and you're seen as lining up for a particular candidate. That candidate might win. That candidate might become the power, him or herself, and you in the ACLU then have a problem.
No, I don't think it's a problem. First of all, again, just to be clear, we do not endorse or back any particular candidate.
Do you not, I mean, we've had this debate for a few minutes now. Do you not recognize that many people look at what you're doing right now, the amount of money you're spending and the way you're spending it, and their perception is just different from yours?
I understand the concern, but my response is that if you don't use the democratic process to defend liberty, you have given up on a critically important tool that, and you will be less effective in defending liberty. And at the end of the day, what we came together to do as the ACLU is to defend liberty. In fact, when the ACLU was founded in 1920, all of its actions were direct action. It said, the first legal director of the ACLU, one of my predecessors, said, we can never expect justice from the courts. Because at that time, the courts were very conservative. The only constitutional rights they were recognizing were the rights of business owners to object to regulation of business. And so they said, we have to use other forums. We use whatever forums are available to further the ideals. But here's the difference. We don't support any particular person because he's a Democrat or because he's a Republican. We support the principles of equality, dignity, liberty, and we use the democratic process as well as the courts to do so, and I think it would be irresponsible not to.
But in brief, how do you feel the courts are handling the difficult challenges posed by different Trump policies? Just take a couple in brief. One, the Muslim travel ban, as it's become known. You challenged it in the courts. In the end, a modified version of that travel ban is in effect. And another key one, the separating of families at the border, illegal immigrant or undocumented immigrants coming in. Yep. Children are taken away from their parents. You challenged that very passionately in the courts. Yes, the courts stopped it happening. Yep. But there are still hundreds of children who are separated from their parents.
Yeah, and we're fighting every day to make sure that they're brought together.
How do you feel about the way the courts are behaving in this era of challenge?
So I would say for the most part, certainly in the lawsuits we've filed against President Trump for violating civil liberties and civil rights, we've prevailed in virtually all of them. The Muslim ban, we prevailed at every level for the first two versions, and on the third version at every level until the Supreme Court. And of course, that's a big if, that's a big but, I think it was a failure on the court's part to recognize what was clearly an anti-religious measure on the part of the president, and to sort of give that a whitewashing. But otherwise, the courts have enjoined the president in seeking to bar young women from getting abortions, enjoined the president with respect to barring transgender people from the military, required them to end the family separation, and the only reason there are still 200 families separated is that it takes time and the government is continuing to fight us. But we are using the court to bring what should have happened right away, bring families back together. So yeah, I think the courts are an important, critical institution for defending liberty. And we, as we told President Trump, we'll see you in court. We have seen him in court, and by and large, the courts have done a good job.
In the last couple of months, you at the ACLU took a really significant decision. You decided to oppose the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to be the latest Supreme Court justice. You have opposed justices before, but it's very rare.
Very rare. This is the fourth time in history that we've opposed any candidate for any office, and it was Justice
But the
Kavanaugh.
way you did it this time was quite extraordinary. You went after Kavanaugh. Again, talking of the money you spend over $1 million in particular ads to attack Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. There was an extraordinary ad, Ed, where you featured Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, the TV presenters, Matt Lauer and Charlie Rose, with a voiceover saying, "We've seen all this before, denials from powerful men." You tied Brett Kavanaugh, who has not been tried in a court of law, who is guilty of nothing, in a courtroom who is innocent until proven guilty. You tied him to men like Bill Cosby, who is serving up to a 10-year prison sentence for drugging and molesting women. You're a lawyer. You think that's acceptable?
No. He's not been convicted of anything, nor has Matt Lauer, nor has Harvey Weinstein, nor has Bill Clinton, who was in that ad.
No, but Bill Cosby has been.
No, Bill Cosby was the only person in that ad who's been convicted of anything.
But that's the point. Bill Cosby is a convicted criminal, a very serious sex offender. You put him in an ad. You put him alongside the name of Brett Kavanaugh. You used the line, "We've seen this before," denials from powerful men. Do you think that was acceptable?
That was the point. That was what united all of those people, was that they were powerful men who were accused of sexual assault and then denied it. And in our view, Brett Kavanaugh was a powerful person who was accused of sexual assault and denied it, and we think very credible allegations of sexual assault. So, you'll note that all of those people in that ad are Democrats, other than Brett Kavanaugh. This was showing we care about sexual assault victims being taken seriously and not giving powerful men a pass simply because they deny.
David Cole, surely,
and the question is not whether the question was not whether Brett Kavanaugh should be convicted of a crime. The question was whether you should give someone about whom there are serious allegations of sexual assault a lifetime appointment on the most powerful court in the country. And I think the view we took was it would be irresponsible not to oppose that appointment at that time, given those allegations.
Surely the ACLU stands for one thing more than anything else. That is the rights of the individual under the law, the right to due process, the right to be regarded as innocent till proven guilty.
That's right.
Yeah. But in the case of
Brett Kavanaugh wasn't being tried for anything. If there were credible allegations of sexual assault against you, and you applied for a job, and an interviewer concluded that the allegations were credible, he doesn't have to prove it in a court of law. He would say, "I'm not going to hire someone where there are credible allegations," and that's for just an ordinary job. This is for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. So, look,
there were other people who were fighting very hard to get Brett Kavanaugh off that court and to block his nomination. I come back to what the ACLU in particular is for, and let me quote to you another former board member, Wendy Kaminer, who was appalled by that particular ad that we've discussed, appalled by your stand against Brett Kavanaugh.
And she's a long-time dissident who has been appalled by virtually everything the ACLU has done.
You keep saying long-time dissident.
Well,
just because they disagree with your and Mr. Romero's policies doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means they're worried about the ACLU's...
I'm just giving you some context.
Yeah, and what she says is interesting. She said, "I wonder how David Cole, that is you, I wonder how he's going to feel about arguing a case before Justice Kavanaugh," because of course he has now gone on to the court, because Kavanaugh will remember that Cole and the ACLU labelled him a Bill Cosby-like sexual predator.
So first of all, we didn't label him a Bill Cosby-like sexual predator. We said there have been a series of powerful men who have denied allegations of sexual assault. One of them is Bill Cosby, one of them is Bill Clinton,
but you see her point.
etc.
You didn't need to get into this fight, but because you are a leading lawyer in civil rights and human rights cases, you inevitably at some point will go to the Supreme Court to make a case. Brett Kavanaugh will be staring at you, and Brett Kavanaugh will probably remember how the ACLU handled his nomination.
He may, and I hope he holds to his obligations as a judge to be fair and neutral, and I presume that he will. But here's what I would say with respect to this. We did not oppose Brett Kavanaugh because of his political views. We did not oppose Brett Kavanaugh because President Trump appointed him. Many other civil rights and civil liberties organizations came out against Brett Kavanaugh from the outset. We did not. We took a neutral position because we don't oppose or support nominees for office. But once Christine Ford testified, and once Brett Kavanaugh testified in the way that he did, our board, and this is a decision of our board, it's not my decision, but our board felt that it would be irresponsible given that. So it was based on the notion that someone who is accused of the kind of act that he was accused of, credibly, no one ever discredited Christine Ford's accusations, should not get lifetime tenure to the court.
Before we finish, a couple of other important challenges that the ACLU has had to deal with. I just wonder, in retrospect, whether you think you got it right. 2017, there was a march of far-right white nationalists in Charlottesville. in the United States. People will remember that it ended in violence. One of the non-violent left-wing protesters there to try to block the far-right march was killed. Now, the ACLU had made a strong stand defending the right of those, a lot of people call them neo-Nazis, to march through Charlottesville. In the light of events, in the light of the loss of life, do you think the ACLU got that one wrong?
I don't think we got that one wrong in this sense. The right-wing nationalist who had applied for the permit and got the permit was at the last minute turned down for the permit by the city of Charlottesville because he was protesting the city of Charlottesville's decision to take down a Civil War monument. And instead, the city of Charlottesville gave the right to protest there to the counter-protesters. So when a city comes in and says, we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to suppress your speech, we like what these other people are saying, we're going to let them speak, that's exactly the time for the ACLU to get involved. Now, of course, we had no idea that it would end in violence. Our client swore under oath that he had no intention to pursue violence. I don't know whether he did or didn't. Maybe maybe in retrospect we could have done more research and we could have determined that in fact he intended to engage in violence, but I don't know that he did. And on the facts of what happened, it was a straightforward First Amendment violation.
Because of what happened, it did then prompt a big internal debate within the ACLU about just how far the defense of freedom of expression should go in the future. Because as you said, in the past, you were very famous for having defended, for example, a neo-Nazi march in Illinois in I think, 1978, which upset a lot of people, but you stuck fast to your principles.
And we're doing the same.
Yeah, but now we've seen this leaked document within the ACLU which discussed whether the free speech limitation should be rethought, the extent to which the speech may assist in advancing the goals of white supremacists or others who are contrary to our values should be taken into account, this document said. I.e., we maybe need to think again about whether we defend the far right.
No. So I wrote that document. Okay, so I can tell you what that document, and it wasn't leaked. It was it was an internal document. That,
you didn't want the outsiders to see it.
No, because it was an internal document about case strategy.
Are you having second thoughts?
No, because here's all it says. It says we are a big tent organization. We defend free speech. We defend civil rights. We defend privacy. We defend women's rights. Inevitably, sometimes rights conflict. When rights conflict, we should have a fulsome discussion with those who defend each of these rights in the room, and we should make a decision understanding the costs of whether to go ahead and how to go ahead. But in that document, we affirmed on page 1, we have a policy of defending those with whom we disagree, including white supremacists, including the alt-right, and we will continue to do so.
Some of your own members now think that you should back off supporting powerful groups like the NRA, but some of your members don't like that. Are you going to win that fight, or is the membership going to win that fight?
The membership is behind us. We didn't lose any members as a result of the NRA fight, but we have always been an organization that is committed to defending the Bill of Rights regardless of who you are, and we will continue to do so, and there's been no indication whatsoever that we are stopping that fight. We are fighting it harder than we've ever fought it before.
David Cole, we have to end there, but thank you for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you.